My name's Amy with Interactive Metronome. I'm the clinical education director, and I have today with me Sue Zapp from Webster, Texas. And she's an occupational therapist. And here we find ourselves in the month of April, and it is two different things we talk a lot about this month. We talk about occupational therapists, which Sue is,
Yeah.
and we talk about autism and increasing awareness of autism. So I want you, before we get started talking about interactive metronome, though, and the diagnosis of autism and the children that you work with, I want to know more about you, Sue. So tell me, what drew you to the profession of occupational therapy? How did you get into this profession?
Okay. So I've always been interested in helping kids and children. And I just always remember being fascinated. Actually, when I was probably in seventh grade, is kind of when autism first came out. And I remember watching a movie about it. And to me, it was just very interesting. So I actually took the long road to school. So I did my technology or my um, vocational training in human services, and from there just went into my undergrad, which was rec therapy, because I do like to play, which is why I like kids.
Hmm.
And from there, I realized that my true calling was occupational therapy. Just from the background and working with the different, at that time, I worked with both adults and kids that had intellectual disabilities, working in residential group homes and day centers. And so that pursued me into seeking the occupational therapy degree. And so moved to Texas at that time to get my master's in OT, and worked in a psychiatric hospital as a rec therapist while I was putting myself through OT school. And just like I said, fell in love with kids and had focused that career into working with children and their families.
Wow. So how long have you been practicing as an OT now?
So I am going on 29 years.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a long time. Wow. So tell me, so you live in Webster, Texas. What's Webster close to?
So Webster is really close to, it's south of Houston, about 20 miles, but everybody knows us as is Space Center Houston.
Okay.
So, Houston, we have a problem. That's where I
Yes.
live. Where I
Okay.
live very close to the Space Center area.
Okay. So you're used to juggling things, I can tell, because that's a lot of stuff to juggle, to go through school and put yourself through school and work full time and all of that. So I know that you have a family. Tell me about your family.
Yeah, so I married my college sweetheart. We met in vocational school, and we've been married. We're going on 35 years this year, this July, which is very
Wow.
exciting. And so I have two sons. I have Christopher, who is my oldest son, and I also have Joshua, who is 2 years younger than him. So they're both now. Chris has graduated from his school. He did environmental science, and Chris was born with some challenges. He had a congenital heart disorder, and
Mm,
so being, as a therapist, you learn all those skills. But then when you become a parent, it's like, wow, you get that other side, that you get to see what your parents are going through, and then when
yeah.
you live that, having a child with learning challenges or differences, so to speak, it really resonates as well. And so he had a difficult first year. And so, with that said, he's been he has done interactive metronome, and I'll never forget. Probably start crying. I don't want to cut that, but I remember I was doing my PhD in pediatric science with my good friend Debbie, who was a physical therapist, and we had to do a case study and actually do research. And so she wanted to do Christopher's and have him do the interactive metronome. And that's actually how we both took the course,
Oh, wow.
was for part of this project. And we also took it because the owner of the clinic at the time, Mary Basic, was one of the first
Oh,
IM
I know
providers in
Mary.
the Houston
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, I remember
And
Mary.
yeah, remember her? And so
Yeah.
she's my mentor, my dear friend, and
Oh,
mom, so to speak. but she was one of the first providers in the area, and we had the interactive metronome at the clinic, and we were just
Mhm.
fascinated with some of the outcomes of the interactive metronome. And so so Debbie decided to do a case study on motor timing and how it influenced kids with developmental delays, so to speak, motor
Mhm.
delays. And so Christopher did the interactive metronome. We did a 15 session, 3 times a week for 5 weeks. And he had delays in language as well. And I'll never forget, we were driving in the car, and all of a sudden he said like this sentence. And I looked in the rear view mirror, and I was like, did Josh say that? But it sounded like Christopher. And it was just like a pivotal turn to see that, incredible change from just
Mhm.
doing those 15 sessions. So Christopher has experienced several activities at my clinic, because he also had got some therapy there. And then Joshua, who is my youngest, also was a big part of the clinic. And that's one thing I really love about the clinic that I own, the Children's Therapy Center. It's always been a very family based clinic.
Mhm.
My family is part of it. It's not that I'm just the owner, my family is part of the clinic. And so Josh is a very gifted in writing and film and the arts, so to speak. And so he was my support for a lot of kids that were in what I call social buddy groups at our clinic. And so he would be a peer mentor and part of that. And then we started a theater group where he would write the scripts, and so our kids that come to the clinic would do a theater social group that helped build social skills, team building, all of that. So
Wow.
those are my two boys, and then I have two dogs that are working on being therapy dogs. One is a therapy dog, and Teddy, who is a year old today, is working on his therapy dog. And then I have a horse because I also do hippotherapy.
That's awesome. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. My son did interactive metronome also when he was younger. He had a lot of sensory processing issues and very hyperactive. He would run across the room, throw himself against the wall, throw himself on the floor.
Uh-huh. So he
It
needed that.
was so bad that daycare was calling me, like your kid's out of control, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And it was amazing. So, I too saw that. I think that in some ways God allows these challenges in our lives so
Oh
we
yeah.
can learn and grow through these things, and he leads us, and we find these technologies and the right people, and then we can go forward and
Hmm.
help other people because we have internalized it. We have had an experience that allows us to understand and relate
Hmm.
to other people on a different level with regard to these things because you've actually lived through it and experienced it, and not just experienced like the therapy
Hmm.
and those aspects, but you experience the emotions, you experience the impact on the family,
Hmm.
the financial impact, all those things, the impact on your time, and
Yeah.
all those things, we become our children's therapists, which can also present challenges. So you understand the challenge of having to be a mom and a therapist to
Hmm.
your child.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I do, looking back, every struggle or challenge that we have gone through, I agree. God has been with us and blessed us in so many ways that now we can be that catalyst to somebody else because we've experienced it, we've learned it, and felt it from here. So
Yes, and you see the light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah, yeah.
We've been given the light at the end of the tunnel, so we see that.
Mhm.
Okay, so wow, so that's amazing. That your son benefited so much from interactive metronome. For the parents that are watching this, we haven't really talked about what interactive metronome is exactly. So can you describe what it is and what exactly was your son doing when he was doing interactive metronome? And then how did it help him? And you talked about the language improvement. Did you see other improvements with him?
Okay. Yeah. So the Interactive Metronome is a computerized program that works on neurotiming. But what I love about it is that it really pulls into three sensory systems, because when you're doing the interactive metronome, you've got your auditory system working, right? Because you're
Yeah.
listening to a metronome beat that you need to um, try to predict when that timing is going to happen. And so you're getting that auditory processing involved, you're getting the motor component involved, because within this program, you're doing motor movements, clapping, using both sides of the body, moving together. So there's several different things that you can do. And then on top of that, you're crossing over that right left brain, right? So you're getting a full brain workout. And along with that, you're also getting that visual input. So you've got the
Mhm.
visual, the auditory, and the motor system working along with the whole neurological networking of crossing over your brain. Now we can talk more scientific, but because we're talking with parents, I want to keep it at that level. And so with what we do at our clinic is we tend to do what's called intensives. And we like the process of intensive because we all know that with practice, you improve and improve and improve. That scientific research supports that. And
Mhm.
so with the clinic, we provide intensive IM sessions, which tend to be 15 sessions is what we do. Now, when we do our interactive metronome intensives, it's not just doing IM. We're incorporating our sensory components in there as well, because we are a sensory based clinic and just the level of kids that we're working with. So our sessions might look at 3 times a week for 5 weeks, or 2 to 3 times a week for 5, 6 weeks, with an hour session each time, because we're truly doing occupational therapy is the intervention we're doing. We are doing OT, but we're using the metronome as one of our tools to help that child achieve their goals. So in our sessions, we might have the child on the swing doing interactive metronome. We will have them maybe doing, as they're learning to understand the syncing of that beat, we are going to work on those pre-skills. But as they improve, we add challenges as well. But then we may take breaks to go do a motor obstacle course out in the gym and come back, because we want to take what that whole body just got from that input from the interactive metronome, and then go, let's see what we can do now with this new um input. Can we execute movement outside just doing the interactive metronome activity? So for the parents to understand, it is a commitment to do those sessions. But when we found that you do it in a more intense setting, we've just seen so much gains, because the skill builds upon the skill and continues to build, that we get that output gain. And so for Christopher, my son, we did the bot as a pre and post test, and so he had significant improvements in the scores on the bot, which is a motor testing that OTs and PTs tend to use. So he
Mhm.
improved with bilateral coordination and movement. His gait was improved because his issues were more in relation to quality of movement. So those improved, but the biggest improvement for me was his language, because
Mhm.
Christopher was still had significant expressive delay. And all, like I said, all of a sudden we got this long lengthy initiated, not just saying it, but initiated a conversation, and talking with us, and keeping
Wow.
up with us in the conversation
Amazing.
in a van driving. So that was to me was a key. And with that, we saw continued self-esteem, confidence grow, and less anxiety. And that was just the first time he had ever done the metronome. Now, with that, we've also continued, because we know that it has been a powerful program for him. When he was getting ready to transition from high school to college, we had him do an intensive again, just to build up that
Mhm.
confidence, to help with
Mhm.
that executive functioning, that organization, because when you're getting ready to move independently and
Yeah.
transition to a new phase of life, you want to have that whole internal organization pulled together. So we saw changes with that as well. So, and even sometimes he's about to go to Yellowstone. He's working for a Christian ministry in the parks for 4 months, and he goes, "Hey, mom, I think maybe we should do that interactive metronome, so I'm ready before I go. So, I mean, he even sees the impact in for him as well. So,
Awesome. That's amazing. With interactive metronome, for those that are new to it, you have a metronome sound coming through headphones, and that's a steady, regular beat, just like a metronome you would use, like a metronome you would use if you're playing piano or some kind of musical instrument. And then how interactive metronome is different is that you get guide tones that come that'll tell you how far off the beat you are. If you're way out here, or if you're a little bit closer, or if you're right exactly on the beat. And so that guide tone feedback will come in your left ear if you're too far ahead, and in your right ear if you're too far after. So this is something that the person that's doing interactive metronome learns as they do it. And so you have the guide tones, and then you also have a visual system with it that gives you that same kind of visual feedback, showing you where you are in relationship to the beat. So you're doing all different kinds of movements. So you're clapping your hands to the beat, or you're tapping on your leg, or you're stepping on a foot pad. You're doing various movements. One of the things that we work on a lot with interactive metronome is kind of crossing over from one side of the body to the other, because a lot of the kiddos don't have good coordination from one side to the other. I guess they call it, what they call that, bilateral
bilateral cord
integration or bilateral
coordination.
coordination. Yeah. So can you tell me how that fits in with what you do? So, how do you work on getting the left side and the right side of the brain to work together? Do you do any specific things with interactive metronome, adaptations, exercises, and things to address that bilateral coordination?
Yeah. So, as you stated, our first few sessions are really helping that child learn that beat and understand that beat and get that timing. Because that's the other thing that is different about interactive metronome is most other programs you're reactive, right? You wait for the stimulus and then you react. Where metronome is that you're trying to figure out when it is. You're predicting that movement. So you're initiating it, right? You're initiating
Yeah.
predicting when is that beat going to happen, and it is a steady beat. So
Mhm.
we're helping that child learn the beat, start to get that beat. So we do a lot of very basic steps in the beginning, but as they start to and we're using the visual and the auditory feedback from that, but as they start to improve and understand and get more with the in timing of that beat to a good score level, so to speak, an average score level, then we start to increase that activity. So we start to increase that workload, so to speak. So doing some bilateral skills, we have a bolster in our clinic, and we might have them hit the switch right and left, like you're
Mhm.
hitting a punching bag, so to speak. We might do right hand to left knee. So we're crossing over that midline because you want to get that body to work together to use both sides together, smooth and synchronicity. And
Mhm.
so we put a lot of like little different game activities up on the wall that they might have to cross to touch a certain pattern while they keep that beat. So really that's what I like about the metronome is, we've got there it comes with 14 preset exercises that
Mhm.
are traditional exercises that you want to do, and you want to do those because you want them to learn those basic moves and get those moves with the synchronicity of the IM beat. But then what allows you as a therapist, and especially from an OT standpoint, we're always, we're creative. We're always trying to make it really fun for our kids. You can add on different ideas and different activities and create their own movements to again increase that workload challenge to get that child to that next level. And so we'll do obstacle courses where they have to keep the beat while not looking at the screen, walking on a balance beam, maybe doing some different jump phases up and over something, cross their midline, crossing their body to touch something. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, and that's fun. That makes it fun because you can really motivate the child, and by the activities you can allow them to even choose and participate in, developing some movements and things to do. Um, timing is really fundamental to everything that we do. And so, with interactive metronome, what we're doing by them getting feedback and synchronizing with the beat, synchronizing their sensory, synchronizing their motor, synchronizing their processing, all their cognitive skills, everything is getting synced up. And so when you think of synchronizing, we're actually synchronizing the neural networks in the brain, getting the brain to work more efficiently. So, in talking about children with autism, because we're in the month of autism awareness, you use this technology with children with autism in your clinic. So, what kind of changes do you see? What do you hear from the families, of the kids that you're working with that are dealing with the diagnosis of autism?
Yeah, so we have done a lot of intensives with kids with autism, and from again, it's what this is what I like about the interactive metronome is it almost goes into that brain from all that neurotiming and repetition of those exercises, and it like connects the pieces that aren't firing together smoothly.
Hmm.
So a lot of times to me the outcomes are so individualized that it really is where that kid is and what that kid needed to bring those networks together, to synchronize them, to make them to be more fluid, so the tasks that they do aren't as aren't difficult. They're smoother, they're easier to do. But just to give you some ideas, we've had motor planning has been a big one, because a lot of times people get caught up in autism from the social standpoint or the language standpoint, but autism for kids with autism can also have gross motor delays, motor time, motor praxis difficulty with motor praxis, which is dyspraxia, and have difficulty with planning and executing a movement. And so we've seen kids that had difficulty with that now be able to follow through and execute a sequence step activity with more fluidity. Jumping jacks are improved, stride jumps are improved. There's no pause between it. They're able to do a fluid jumping jack up and a fluid jumping jack down. Balance and coordination skills are another area that we've seen where kids are able to balance and maintain their posture on a dynamic surface without,
Hmm.
losing control. Attention's a big one. With almost all of our kids, we see improved attention, and able to focus, that improved executive functioning, where you're going to take a task and you're able to look at it, break it down and figure it out and apply it, as well as, I always impressed with social skills. You would think, okay, how
Hmm.
is this timing improving social skills? But we've had some of our kids that have done it all of a sudden start initiating conversations where the therapist was like, oh my goodness, did he just finish the interactive metronome? Because oh my wow, he just asked me what I did for Easter break. So it's
Wow.
really cool to see those different challenges, as well as just that own internal self-awareness and self-confidence. You really need to have that confidence in order to be able to go and, achieve the tasks that you want for yourself in life.
Yeah. Um, the we hear from families that their child was able to ride their bike for the first time,
Mhm,
that they're able to tie their shoes for the first time,
mhm,
that they do initiate social interactions.
mhm,
There was one boy I remember. I think it was Wendy Heron. She's an occupational therapist. Also, sent us a case study, like a case write up. And I want to say it was a young boy who was on the autism spectrum and never had any friends.
mhm.
And he actually had people come to his birthday party like
Oh,
the first time. So it was like a really big deal. So when you work with the children with autism, um, how do you adjust for sensory processing concerns, and what kind of adjustments do you make? What kind of things do you introduce with the interactive metronome?
so for our kids, because we are a very sensory based clinic, that is our specialty area. So we try to really include the first part is really looking at that regulation, helping them to become regulated. So we do the IM in its own room area. We try to have sensory activities there. We involve a swing if they're ready for it to help them with that vestibular input to help, kind of modulate them so they're able to attend and focus. We might dim the lights if needed, to try to make sure it's not so overwhelming. Sometimes based on auditory feedback, some of our kids may not be able to handle the headsets right away, so we may just start off with the speaker system
Mhm.
help with that. We try to incorporate, also because we know a lot of our kids tend to be sensory seekers as well. We may try to add some extra sensory input into the exercises that we do and put shaving cream on switches before to make it fun, different adapt switches, so there's various textures or tactile input to give them input if they're seeking it. But then also for some of our kids that are avoiders, we try to make it less overwhelming, and more calm, a
Mhm.
calm environment. Are some strategies that we do.
That's great. And that reminds me, yeah, there's different companies that sell different switches and
Mhm.
things you can use those with interactive metronome. You can plug those right in.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I like about that is the adaptability that we have with different switches and things like that.
yeah. And then what do you hear back from families? What kind of feedback are you getting back from families that have children with autism or, various conditions? When you use interactive metronome, what kind of feedback do they give you?
So, some of the feedback have been that they're able to focus, attend, and maybe complete their homework or complete a task. That better organization, able to, find things maybe in a drawer or things in their backpack that they had difficulty with before. The motor planning, be able to follow through. I know some of my kids, jumping jacks, they couldn't accomplish a jumping jack and were able to do jumping jacks and stride jumps
Mhm.
with that, go to the next level of bilateral gross motor planning. Social skills has been a big piece as well, just being able to engage in conversations, pick up that back and forth in a
Yeah.
conversation,
Mhm.
read some of the nonverbal cues. I had a little girl who was able to, she was being mainstream into a regular kindergarten, and her behavior was much more controlled, less impulsivity. She was able to attend and focus and be part of that classroom.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's life changing.
Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is. It's just and you would again, it's when you tell a parent, it's kind of like, wow, you mean this single beat does all these things? But like you stated earlier, it's just that whole that neuroreceptivity that is happening within the brain that is really syncing. And I just feel it's just pulling together a stronger network. So those neurons can fire and do it with control and synchronicity, which is what they need.
Yeah. And how do the kids like it?
They enjoy it, they enjoy the games. I think the challenges as a therapist, but that is for all therapy that you do as a therapist, is you wanna make it fun and you really find out what are your kids' interests or your client's interests, strengths, and needs, and then you adapt that and put that in with the metronome, and that's what's really great about it is you've got this tool, but you can individualize it to each child's needs. Like
Mhm.
right now, I have a kiddo who's doing a 15 session intensive and he loves mice. And so one of the things is we have a mouse graph where as he completes his sessions each day, he colors in his mouse graph. So it's kind of that positive reward. Hey, I got these in. Making the challenge. I bet you can do you think you can get 70 of those aliens today with the super ride-ons? Let's get those aliens turned to from red to green. I think you can make 70. You just, you look at that child's needs and you try to motivate them and get them tied in because and once they see the success and once they see, wow, I can do this now and I couldn't do it before, that's, you get them interested and
Yeah.
engaged.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap things up, because I want to respect your time, I really appreciate your time today, Sue. It just, as you're talking, it reminds me of the importance of the therapist in all of this, you know, what you bring to it. It's not just the interactive metronome, it's you, it's your heart, it's how you it's your you might call us like kid whisperers,
Yeah.
you know? We're able to get them motivated and to do things that sometimes it's hard for parents to get them to do, because it's a different relationship. But we develop a trust relationship with these children and get them to cooperate and enjoy the process of cooperating actually for their benefit. um, but it's amazing. It's a powerful tool, one of the tools in the toolbox that you have as a therapist. So, well, we appreciate your time today, Sue. Is there anything you'd like to say as we wrap up today?
I agree. I think that each therapist brings their we all have our toolbox. And with that though, we as therapists have our personalities and our different skills that we're gifted, that we are blessed to have. And I think using that and building that relationship first, I think is key to any therapy, that you have to be able to see that child's gifts, see that child's abilities, look at it and say, okay, these are his strengths. We're going to go with that. We're going to help this child get to that next level by unwrapping these skills that may not be fully blossomed yet.
Yeah.
And I think that it's great for us to be as therapists to have these tools available to us, and then bring in, like I said, our own personality, our own skills, linking it to the child's interests, desires, and abilities. And you can really make a difference in their lives and give them and the family hope, because every parent wants the best for the child. They want their child to succeed. And it really is a privilege to be able to do that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sue.
yeah,
Thanks for being with us today.
yeah, good.